Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. If you like retro gaming, you came to the right place. Let's talk about the Intellivision. The four most iconic games for the console, the Mount Rushmore of Intellivision games, if you will. I'm having a lot of fun doing this series. I pick out 4 games for each console. Now, these aren't just 4 of my favorite games. These aren't just 4 of the greatest games. These are the 4 most iconic games. They have to be famous, iconic, great, and emblematic of the console. When you think of the Intellivision, what are the first few games that come to mind? What are the ones that are most tied to the console? And so for example, something like Pitfall, now that's an iconic game, but it's not going to make the Mount Rushmore cut for the Intellivision because it's not really emblematic of the console. Now for the Atari 2600, that might be a different story. So let's get to it. The 4 most famous, iconic, great, and emblematic of the console games for the Intellivision. It has to meet all these categories. Let's get to it. All right, guys, the Intellivision had a slow rollout in the US in 1979, and then it was released nationwide in 1980. And this is when I first played it. My girlfriend had an Intellivision, like I've told you guys before, and her dad and her dad's really good friend would play NFL football, Major League Baseball, and Las Vegas poker and blackjack. I thought these games were cool, but I didn't really fall in love with the Intellivision until a little later at a church sleepover at a youth director's house where I played Astro Smash, Star Strike, and Space Armada and thought, wow, this is a great system. It's like Atari, but even cooler with better games. You know, certain games are better anyway. But, but what are the 4 most iconic games for the console? That's a good question, and I know I'm going to get some disagreement here, but I'm just calling them as I see it, guys. Number 1, Major League Baseball. Now, the Intellivision back then was sort of the Sega Genesis of its day as far as being well known as a great console for sports games. They had remarkably realistic sports games for the time, including Major League Baseball, and they had licenses for major leagues, which was pretty much unheard of at the time. The game had a baseball diamond, bunting, walking, stealing. You could control individual fielders and the pitching speed. There were no fly balls. It wasn't a perfect game. It didn't have every feature of real baseball. The Intellivision was the sports console, and Major League Baseball was one of the greatest sports games of the era. It was the best-selling game for the console at 1 million plus copies. Remember the George Plimpton ads comparing home run baseball for the 2600 to Major League Baseball for the Intellivision and how much better the Intellivision game looked? That's another thing that makes it iconic. I can't imagine leaving Major League Baseball off the list of most iconic games for the Intellivision. It's so tied to that console. Now later, they released World Championship Baseball for the Intellivision with a much needed 1-player mode. Great little upgrade there, but Major League Baseball is the game that most people played, and that's what's heavily just tied in with the Intellivision. You can hardly think of the console without Major League Baseball. Now, almost equally with Major League Baseball, almost equally iconic and just very emblematic of the console is NFL football. Again, a very realistic sports sim for the time. There were 9 selectable formations, which made great use of the Intellivision keypad. It had a nicely marked field. It actually looked like football. Those early sports games for the Atari 2600, like home run baseball, like the football game, the early football for the Atari, they just did not look like, they didn't have the field markings and things like that. They just didn't look like their respective sport. But man, the Intellivision was a whole new thing with a lot more features and everything, and NFL football was great. It was the first football video game with a playbook. It had punting, field goals, safeties. You could run out of bounds. It had interceptions, a scrolling playfield. It was a world apart from any football game that came before it, and it is indelibly linked to the Intellivision. It made, NFL football, Major League Baseball, and even Las Vegas poker and blackjack, which was the pack-in with the console. These games made the Intellivision just seem more mature. A lot of people's dads played them. A lot of people's moms played them. It just seemed like just sort of a more sophisticated console. And NFL football was a big reason why. All right, guys, let's get to game number 3. This next game seems like a no-brainer, Astro Smash. It's a nice mashup of asteroids and space invaders. Yeah, it's too easy and you can play for a very long time, but it's fast-paced. It's a nice change of pace from the sports and strategy games for the console, the more slow, more methodical games for the console. Astro Smash was fast and fun, a great shooter. It was ported beautifully to the Atari 2600 as Astro Blast, which is an even better game. But Astro Smash has been cited over the years by many gamers as one of their favorite games for the console. Now, this is anecdotal. It's one of my favorite games for the console. It was one of the games a lot of people were looking forward to on the Amico. It's one of the best selling games for the console. It definitely sold me on the system. It made me think the Intellivision could be just as much fun as the Atari 2600. And guys, Sheldon Cooper on Big Bang Theory wore an Astro Smash t-shirt in several episodes. I mean, iconic. Come on, guys. Astro Smash is indelibly linked with the Intellivision. It absolutely belongs on the Mount Rushmore of Intellivision games, in my opinion. You can hardly think of the Intellivision without thinking of Astro Smash. Let me know in the comments if you feel differently. Next up, now this one I had to think about a little bit, but then it popped into my head. Absolutely Burger Time. Not only was it the pack-in game with the Intellivision 2, it is a fantastic port of the iconic Bally Midway arcade classic. Yes, Burger Time was iconic before it got the Intellivision, and the Intellivision version was the first port of the game, and it's a fantastic port. It's cited by many people as their favorite, or at least one of their favorite games for the console. There were 7 playfield layouts in the game compared to 6 for the original arcade version and for the ColecoVision. It actually had an extra screen. It also has a catch-up bonus item, which was not available in the arcade or ColecoVision. Just phenomenal to have some features that weren't in the original arcade version or in the ColecoVision port. Holy cow. The game has excellent controls, no flickering, which you can't say that about the ColecoVision version, which does have flickering, and it has faithfully adapted sound. And like I said, the pack-in game with the Intellivision 2, not a ton of people had the Intellivision 2 compared to the first Intellivision, but that's just one feature. Now, I didn't include Las Vegas Blackjack and Poker with the Intellivision, you know, the pack-in title, because it's just not as great as some of these other games, and even as the pack-in, it just wasn't an iconic game. It was just kind of, people were like, that was one of the weaker pack-in games with the console. But anyway, Burger Time, a huge Intellivision game, a beloved classic, and it had a console-specific sequel, Diner. Burger Time, definitely on the Mount Rushmore of Intellivision games, but let me know if you disagree. Now let's get to some honorable mentions. A lot of you guys are probably shouting, Lock and Chase. Yes, that great maze game based on an arcade classic is emblematic of the Intellivision in a lot of ways. I just didn't think it quite made the cut. Beauty and the Beast is my favorite Intellivision game. Didn't quite make it. Demon Attack is phenomenal. You might think of it more of as a Atari 2600 game, but I love the Intellivision version with the sophisticated graphics and similar gameplay, but very different at the same time. Nightstalker, that was another one that a lot of people were looking for, a remade version on the Amico. And Nightstalker is a great game, and a lot of people do equate it with the Intellivision, but didn't quite make the cut. Bump and Jump, like Burger Time, is a phenomenal port. Didn't quite make it. B-17 Bomber, very iconic. B-17 Bomber. That one almost made my list. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons was close. No Pitfall, though. No Pac-Man, no Donkey Kong Jr. These are iconic games, famous games, but they are not tied to the Intellivision in a way that Astro Smash, Burger Time, Major League Baseball, or NFL football is. NBA basketball didn't quite make the cut, but it was close. Anyway, guys, let me know in the comments, what do you think are the 4 most iconic games for the Intellivision? The 4 Mount Rushmore games for the Intellivision. The big 4. Remember, they have to be great, iconic, famous, and absolutely emblematic of the console. A game that you just absolutely think of almost as soon as you hear the name of the console, or just right along with it. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking this video. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. It is incredibly helpful. And remember, comment below, not just your favorite Intellivision games, though you can do that if you want, the 4 most iconic. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later.
It's me, Mario! Here we go!